Hey guys, this is Lisa from My Copper Life. Today I'm going to show you how to make these cute little snowman pendant and earring set. Also included in this video is a mini tutorial on how to make ear wires. So let's get started. This list is a little difficult to read, but you can always look in my description in this video for materials used. Otherwise, I'm going to list them right now. The materials I'm using for this project are as follows: 20 gauge wire, 26 gauge wire, a bench block, which is not pictured in this picture, round nose pliers, flathead pliers, flush cutters, round glass faux pearl beads. You need 2 6mm, 3 8mm, and 1 12mm, Rondelle silver spacer beads, 3 8mm, Tibetan spacer silver beads, 3 3x5mm, crystal rhinestone Rondelle spacer beads, 2 5mm, and 1 8mm, a cup burr, an 8mm mandrel, 3 silver head pins, a 20-inch silver snake chain, and a metric ruler. Okay, now we're going to start with the snowman pendant, and I'm taking this head pin, which I use to make these projects. It's easier than making my own head pins, so I prefer just to use these. I'm going to grab my 12mm round faux pearl bead, and we're going to put that on the head pin. This will be the base of the snowman. Next, I'm going to grab my crystal rhinestone Rondelle spacer. This one's the 8mm one, and this will kind of separate the little bottom snowman ball from the top, his head. It's kind of the scarf of the snowman. Then I'm going to grab my 8mm round faux pearl bead and then slide that one on. And there's the little snowman without his hat. You want to make sure that the head pin is flush up against that bottom pearl, so I generally just kind of tuck my finger under there to make sure it's up there. And now I'm going to grab my Rondelle silver spacer bead and pop that on there. And this makes the base of its hat. And then I'm adding the Tibetan silver spacer bead on top of that. Now the holes on these are a little bit larger, so they do kind of wiggle around, but once we make our little loop on the top, that will tighten all that together. Now while holding that head pin tight, I'm going to bend the top of that head pin over the top of the snowman's hat at a 90-degree angle. Now I'm going to grab my round nose pliers and create a loop at the top of the snowman. This takes a little bit of figuring out how big or how small your loop needs to be. You just kind of work with it. You'll get it. I've done this so much that I kind of know where to place my pliers to make that loop. And you just want to tuck it down into the loop and then until it's really tight, so it goes right into that little Tibetan bead, nice and snug. And now we're finished with our cute little snowman pendant. Now we get to add the chain. I use these silver snake chains. They are really good for either heavy pendants or light pendants. I don't like to have to keep a bunch of different chains in stock, so I just use the same snake chain for all my silver jewelry. Okay, so now we're gonna make the earrings, and the earrings is just a smaller version of the pendant. So I'm gonna show you that. Here's the pendant, and here's the little earring. You can make them any size that you'd like to. You can make the pendants and the earrings the same size. You can even make your pendant smaller or larger. It's totally up to you as a creator. So next we're gonna grab another head pin and start this earring. I'm grabbing the 8mm faux round glass pearl bead to make the base of the snowman. Again, you need to hold that head pin up against that bead at the bottom. Now we're going to grab a crystal rhinestone rondelle spacer bead. It's the 5mm one for the scarf of the snowman. Next, we're grabbing another glass faux round pearl bead, and this one is the 6mm pearl bead. Next, we're going to grab the Rondelle silver spacer bead and place that on top for the brim of his little hat. And then we're going to grab the last Tibetan spacer bead and place that on top of the top of his little hat. And then we're going to hold that head pin in nice and secure at the bottom of that bead, and then bend that wire at a 90-degree angle, again, just like we did for the pendant. And once again, we're going to grab those round nose pliers and make a little loop with the end of this wire into that Tibetan spacer bead, so we can make it nice and snug, and snug up those beads really close to each other so they're not moving all around everywhere. Look how cute these guys turned out. If you guys like these guys as much as I do, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what your opinion is. Now I'm going to teach you guys how to make your own ear wires. I generally use 20 gauge wire. It's the most comfortable in the ear. This is the silver wire. I use Parawire for this one, but you guys can use any wire. I'm not sponsored or anything by this company. I just like their wire and use it quite often, but I do use other brands as well. So now I'm going to measure a piece of this wire at 4.5 centimeters. First, I'm flush cutting that edge so it's already ready for the piece I'm going to use. And I'm measuring 4.5 centimeters, and then we'll cut that for the first ear wire. This little wire had a little bend in it, so I needed to straighten that out before measuring for my next one. So now I'm going to take the wire and I'm going to flush cut that tip, and then use the other one as my gauge for the size of the other one. You want them to be exact same size. And then flush cut that end. Have our wire for the 2 ear wires. Now we're going to make a little loop on the end of this first wire using the round nose pliers. So I'm just going to grab it with the very end, the tip of my round nose pliers, because you want this little loop to be pretty small. I'm going to wrap it around there, and then I'm going to remove my pliers and grab the outside edge of the wire and then bend the majority of that wire back up straight so that this loop is centered on the bottom of that wire. And then I'm going to tighten that loop back up Sometimes it kind of pulls apart a little bit when we're doing that. But there you go, a finished eye pin basically. And now we're going to do the second one exactly like we did the first one, making your loop. Then removing the pliers, grabbing the outside edge of that loop where the main wire comes from it. And then straightening that wire up to be centered on that loop. And there you've got the second eye pin. We're going to tighten that up as well. There you go. Now we're going to grab both of these eye pins and put them together with the end of the loop facing the same direction. So that way when we make our ear wires, they're going to be identical to each other. So we're going to put them up against each other like this. So now I'm going to grab my flat nose pliers and I'm going to grab these wires as closely to the loop as possible. And pushing those loops down so that they're right up close. These pliers are 3mm width, so that's why I'm using these rather than my other ones. The other ones that I have are either 4 or 5mm, can't remember off the top of my head. But that way we get a nice 3mm space from the top of the loops. And here I'm just making sure that everything is straight and even. I think they were just slightly not quite straight, so I wanted to make sure that they were straight and even with one another. So I'm going to make a couple little adjustments here with my flat nose pliers since I have them, and make sure that they're nice and straight and flat up against each other. Okay, and now I'm going to grab again at the base of those loops, and then I'm going to bend these wires at a 90-degree angle up against my flat nose pliers there. And there you can see that, and make sure they're 90 degrees. And we're ready for the next part. Here I'm going to grab my 8mm Mandrel, which is a rhinestone picker pencil. I use a lot of different items for mandrels, but in this case I use this pencil because it's 8mm and I like the 8mm size for my ear wires. So I'm going to hold on to my pliers pretty tightly and center that pencil right on those flat nose pliers. It's kind of hard to hold on to it, but do the best you can. And then wrap the wire around that pencil all the way back to the flat nose pliers. And you want to do both wires together because that will make them exactly the same. If you do them separately, you're not going to have them line up or be paired exactly the same. So there is that pair of ear wires after I've shaped them on my mandrel. You can see they're starting to look like ear wires. So now I'm going to take my flat nose pliers again and I'm going to flatten the wire a little bit right here. This just allows the ear wire to be pulled away a little bit from the base there so that it allows for easier access to the ear. So you want to ensure that these ear wires are exactly the same. So when you put them on, that they're hanging correctly, the same in each ear, they're not lopsided or anything. So take your time at this part and make sure everything's lined up nicely like I'm doing here. So next I'm going to cut off a little bit of the ends of this ear wire. It depends on what size mandrel you're using and whether or not you can use the entire wire or if you might need to cut a little bit. Since I'm using a smaller 8mm for this one, I am going to go ahead and cut off some of the end of this to the right spot. A little shaky. I shake a lot, so it takes me a little bit sometimes to get these cut or line things up sometimes. But I'm going to cut off about 1/8 of an inch. Here I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers and grab it toward the end of those wires and bend outward just a little bit. And this makes it easier to put the ear wires in the ear. And this is what we have so far. We're almost there. Next, I'm grabbing my 26 gauge silver wire, and here I'm using the artistic wire. Again, I am not sponsored by them. It's just another wire I use. And I'm going to grab probably about a 6-inch piece of this wire. I kind of eyeball it and cut it. And we're going to use this 26 gauge wire to wrap around the base of the ear wires to make that French style ear wire. Okay, so we're going to grab the ear wire and put that wire, the weaving wire, behind there, and then start wrapping around. And I'm going to wrap probably about 10 wraps around the base of this ear wire. I'm just going to fill that whole bottom part there from the loop to the bottom of the wire that bends outward. I'm going to wrap some of the tail of that around so I don't waste so much of that. And then continue wrapping to the top of this. And once I get to where I think that looks pretty full, smush all that wire together, and now I'm going to cut the ends of that wire off as close as possible. And then with my chain nose pliers, I'm going to make sure that wire is nice and flat up against the base wire. And just check to make sure there's no stabby ends there. And then cut the little tail off the other end. And again, grabbing the chain nose pliers and tucking that wire up against the base wire. And there we go. Now we got to do the same thing with the other ear wire, only this time I'm going to put the ear wire on top of this. Since they're mirroring each other, I like to do it opposite. The other one I put the weaving wire under and then started weaving. This one I put it on top and started weaving. So I'm going to go around. I mean, it probably doesn't matter. I just like to do mirror images. This wire is so small, people aren't going to notice that it's going the wrong direction. But yeah, I'm just a perfectionist and like things to look. I know it's the wrong way, so I'm going to do it the right way. Anyway, we're going to finish wrapping this up all the way to the top. Again, about 10 wraps is what I usually do. And I'm pulling that and making sure that's tight. For some reason it wasn't very tight at the end there. And snipping off my ends. Tucking that weaving wire up against the base wire. And then doing the other side. Cutting off that end. And this side wanted to give me a little bit of trouble. It took me a little bit of time. I think I end up kind of twisting that whole wire up so that I can get it in a better spot for me to get it flush up against the base wire. So there you can kind of see it sticking up still. And there we go. All better. And here they are, complete with that weaving wire around the base. Just dresses them up a little bit. So next we're going to grab the bench block. And we're going to hammer just the outside edge of where it's curved, the top, at the very top of the weaving wire, and to almost the top of the ear wire itself. So the reason I hammer these is it just makes it a little bit more firm and supportive there so the wire doesn't bend as easily. I also throw my ear wires into a tumbler when I'm done, along with a lot of my jewelry to harden them. This just helps to keep them from bending so easily. Now I'm going to do the second one. And you can see that I'm just getting that outer edge. And there it is up close. Because you don't want to do it to the whole thing, because then it's not going to be comfortable going in the ear. You want the wire that's going to set in the ear to be rounded still. Now I'm going to double check and make sure everything's still lined up, make any adjustments I need to make. Sometimes messing around with them a little bit, they will kind of get out of shape a little bit. So there, they're all even back up, and we have a complete set of ear wires. Oh wait, we got one more thing I need to do. This is called a cut burr, and I'm going to use this to round the ends of my ear wires. Nobody's going to want to put these wires in their ears because they're a little sharp on the edges, and that's not any fun, putting in a sharp ear wire in your ear. So we're going to round these over to make them nice and smooth and easy to put in the ear. We don't want any bleeding ears. So it does take a little bit of time. You just kind of put it on there and twist it back and forth until you get a nice little round tip like this. And I'm going to show you here the unfinished versus the finished. It's kind of hard to see, but you can tell the other one is just a flat surface where the other one is a rounded surface. I also have a Dremel tool with the cut burr attachments, and if I'm doing several pairs of earrings, I'd rather use that Dremel tool because it's much faster than trying to do it by hand. But if I'm just doing one pair of earrings, this cut burr works just fine, the manual one, which I'm showing you here. It doesn't take very long, but if you're doing like 10, 20 pairs of earrings at once, it just takes forever. So there you see me twisting back and forth. And you can see it does take a little bit of time to get that nice and rounded over. And you can check in between and see how it's doing and make sure it feels nice and smooth, but there you go. Now my ear wires are complete. So next we're going to grab our little snowman for the ear wires. And we're going to take the chain nose pliers and bend this little loop out to the side. You don't want to pull it straight out. You'll deform the little loop. So bend it out to the side. And we're going to stick our little snowman on there. And then bend it back the same way we bent it out, just in reverse. And then bending it out and back like that will harden that little loop as well. Just as you bend it back and forth, it starts to harden the wire. So it makes it more secure. There's one. Now we need to do the same for the second one. Again, bend the loop out toward the side, not straight back from the post. The snowman goes on, and we're going to twist that loop back into shape. And there's the second one. And now we have a pair of snowman earrings. So cute. There's the pendant and the earrings. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next week. If you want to see more of my videos, then don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you the next time.